Once a year I tell a little bit about the story about how Turning Point got started, and I do that on the month of my anniversary, so that's this year. So to let you all know what Turning Point was about and how I got here a little bit. Chance to give out one-year medallions. But I think it's important for people to realize that you can make it, and that you can make it in the program within Turning Point or without Turning Point, outside of Turning Point. You can make it. Okay, now the last part. This month, I get
It'll be alright.
It'll be all right.
yeah, it's not me. See, God did this. God put Turning Point together. God saved me. I was 29 years old when they came in. This man here was 3 years old. 3 years old. My daughter was her 4th birthday. And these grandkids probably wouldn't have been around if I hadn't quit. One of the things that happens, and this may happen to you, and I hope it does, I used to be hard. There's a picture of me over the office if you want to see me after I was in the program. And I just look cold. Even to me, I look cold. And I never cried, I never got upset. I just got mad. I was full of rage. Just like every one of you guys. You know, we come here because we're trying to get better, but we ain't there yet. Every single one of us. And that's exactly where I was 32 years ago. And of course, it's become a way of life, as you can understand. You know, you're doing something for 32 years, one day at a time, and then that's the way you live. You just live that way. I came close to, I lost everything in 1994. I was 25 years sober or so, and there was a depression. I won't call it a recession. I call it a depression. Hit in upstate New York and New York City area in 92, 93. I had a log home business. We were selling 40 homes, manufacturing, selling 40 homes a year as a real estate broker. Things were going pretty well in my life. I lost, from 91 on, I lost all of that. And I ended up in 1994 living out of the back of my car, moving ahead of the hook man. And I went from a 6-figure salary to homeless in 3 years. And I couldn't understand. I was 25 years old. I really couldn't understand what was going on, except I felt a failure. As you can imagine, this couldn't hack it. And I even thought about ending my life. You know, just tired. 55 years old, get tired. I've been hammering away at this for 25 years. And of course, I was feeling sorry for myself. Not much difference. You know, I really had to reach another bottom. And I reached that bottom in the fall of 94. All right? Said, I just sort of sat down outside her and I said, God, whatever you want to do, just do it. Because I just said, I can't fight anymore. So it was the same kind of bottom that I had reached in 1969. Same kind of bottom. It was the point at which I was totally willing to let God do whatever he wanted because I just couldn't cope anymore. And in 1969, I was in the New Jersey Neuropsychiatric Institute in the Nut House in the Alki floor with the same kind of problem. And I did the same kind of thing. Now, I have to admit, I didn't see it because I'd been sober a long time, so I didn't see it at first. But what I now believe, and came to believe in a short period of time, was I was on the street for 3 months, meaning the fact I was literally had no mailing address, and I wasn't sleeping in a building. That isn't a long time. Some of you guys have done that for a lot longer than I have. Some of you have never done it. But I got to tell you, it was long enough for me. Cleaning up in the head station in the morning and trying to go sell insurance in the afternoon, it was no fun. What I didn't realize was that I was in training. I was really in advanced training for this job because I couldn't have understood. I'm not a crack addict. I'm an alcoholic, pure and simple. I ran on speed for a little while way back in the early 60s when it was called Black Beauties and stuff like that. But outside of that, I've never even smoked pot. So I cannot relate to a crack addict in that literal sense. I cannot relate to a pothead or a guy that's doing a lot of pills. I was never there. I can relate to alcoholics. Believe me, I was there. There's no question about that. And but in order to come to and start Turning Point, I had to know what it was like to be homeless. I had to learn what it was like to lose everything. I lost my wife, I lost my pension, I lost my job, I lost my credit rating, I lost 2 or 3 houses and buildings that I owned. I mean, there was literally nothing. I showed up at Rick's door down here in March 1st, 1995, with a car that the hook man was looking for. They were going to repo it, and I knew it was coming. I was just running ahead of them. I kept moving around so they couldn't get the car. And I guess I had $200 in my pocket that day. And that was it. That's all that I had. The next morning, and I was on my way to Denver too. I wasn't even going to stay here. I was just going to visit with my son for a while and then head for Denver. The next morning I went outside and I met a guy named Scott standing next to the car, and he said, do you have any information about, do you know anything about, I'm listening to my grandson, he's making a bed. Do you have any information about, do you know anything about alcoholism? Hey, I had 25 years. I mean, I know about alcoholism. So I said, yeah, why do you want to know? He said, because we're running a place called Jacob's Ladder here, and I need a driver. Well, just my kind of job. I lost my health, too, by the way. I couldn't lift my arms to my shoulder. I gained a huge amount of weight. I was a mess. I had early stages of, what do they call that? Post-traumatic. Well, I had post-traumatic syndrome. They had me on Zoloft. And I also had the heart failure, which started out. So I was a mess. And so I started driving for these guys, and then they took my car. Now, they weren't providing me a car. I had to provide my own car. So Rick and I sat down on a Saturday morning. I remember it was just as clear as it was yesterday. An apartment, was it 98 over here? What was the number of your apartment? 89. 89. It was the apartment over here at the end. And I said, I guess I better put my money where my mouth is. Because we've been talking about how we trusted in God and one thing. And I said, I got to do this. So we just sat down and we prayed a simple prayer, which is, I need a car. I got $100. That seems to be an impossibility to me, to buy a car with $100. But if I'm going to work, I need the car. Help me. And we went out from there. We went out and went shopping or something. We made a few phone calls, let some people know we were looking for a car. Within 4 hours, the phone rang. There was a message when we came back. A lady had heard about that we needed a car and said, come on over, I might have something for you. So we went over to her house, and she had a car. It was a Mitsubishi Dodge Colt. Now, I weigh 325 pounds now. At that point, I probably weigh close to 375. Now, picture me in a Mitsubishi Dodge Colt. I mean, I thought I would wear one on my left foot and wear one on my right foot. But I got in it, and darn, I fit. I could have been more surprised than I was. So that was enough for me. I could fit in the car, and it ran, you know. So I went back to talk to the lady and explained the circumstance, and she said, well, I said, how much do you want for the car? And she said, well, could you pay $100? That's what I had, $100. So God provided the car for $100 within 4 hours of my prayer. Not only did He provide the car, but she said, you probably don't have any money for insurance, do you? Registration. I said, I really don't. She said, well, I'll tell you what I'll do. I registered this for my son. There's about 3 months left on it. You drive the car, use the registration, use the insurance, and then when you get some money put together, then you can finish it off. Now that is God delivering over and over in abundance. I mean, I was just in shock. I didn't know what to say, you know. So that started it. Now, I had run a pretty large outpatient clinic up in the Northeast, so I knew something about alcoholism. I also had, obviously, 25 years at that time. The people who were running Jacob's Ladder did not have any experience with running this kind of stuff, and they had none of them were recovering. But they had all the answers. So they wouldn't let me explain anything or suggest anything. They had all the answers. They had so many answers they were bankrupt by the middle of July. Both rehab didn't want to deal with them. Nobody wanted to send him anybody. There was down to one client and myself, and they went out of business. They also owned all these apartments, and so they went bankrupt completely. They lost the apartments, they lost everything. So they came to me in the middle of July and said, would you like to buy Turning Point, or Jacob's Ladder, as we call it then? And I'm laughing. I mean, you know, I didn't have enough money to buy anything except lunch. And here they are, they want me to buy a rehab or a recovery house. So I said, sure, I think. But I'm really thinking in my heart, I don't want this aggravation. I just came off a lifetime of management, and I really don't want to do this. I just want some little easy, picky job where I can drive guys around. I thought maybe I'd become a taxi driver. Just something simple, really simple. I was tired. But that wasn't what God wanted. The Holy Spirit said, no, 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 no. And I got to tell you that for the next 6 months, I felt like I was being pushed down a chute because I didn't have any way to turn. So I tried excuses. Doesn't this sound familiar? So you just get better in 32 years. You don't get well. You know what I'm saying? So, first of all, I don't have any money. That's okay. You can owe it to us. Well, I don't have any credit. It'll work out. Now I had 2 apartments and 2 more coming online within 2 months. I had no money. I had to pay rent. They did have beds and stuff in them, but there was no electricity. There was no telephone. There was no cable. I had the credit. You can imagine what my credit rating was like going. You know, through. I didn't go through bankruptcy. I just bailed out. You know, and I tried to run the business on plastic for a year up north, and it was a disaster. So there was no way anybody was going to give me anything. But I had forgotten that if God wants to do it, it's going to get done. It's going to get done. So we pulled a little board together, a couple of guys to help. Rick was one of them. A couple of people from the church. We borrowed, I think it was $2,000. People came forward, most wonderful people. People came forward and said, I'll sign for the electricity. I'll sign for the telephones. I'll sign for the cable. But what a risk they were taking. If I failed, they would have been on the hook for that stuff. But they did that out of their heart. So we needed to provide transportation. We needed some kind of security so you guys wouldn't get ripped off or robbed in the middle of the night. And you needed to relearn the basics. I used to play ball. I expect a bunch of you guys did too. And sometimes you can get so caught up in what's going on, you forget the basics. And the coach has got to bring you back to basics. You've got to learn to block, dribble, punt, whatever your sport is. You've got to get back to and learn how to do it. In our case, for most recovering people, my feeling was, and I think I'm still correct in that, was we had to learn how to get dressed, show up in the morning, do a day's work, come home, go to a meeting at night, have a little time for ourselves, go to church on the weekend if we wanted to, and then get a little bit of relaxation caught up with it. We had to relearn how to work because most of us have been ripping and running on the streets in one form or another. So that's where we started out. That's why the first thing people ask me, what are you? I say, I'm a working man's halfway house. That's what we do. We don't take, and you notice that with 1 or 2 exceptions in the last 5 years, if you can't work, you don't come here. You can have disability and pay the bills and all that stuff. That's great, but it doesn't fit into this environment. At first, and Claude will remember, we took anybody in. Detox, off the street. I used to go drive down the street. You need a home? Come on, we'll take you in. Well, I learned very quickly that people are at various stages of recovery and non-recovery. You know, there are some guys that are just looking for 3 hots and a cot. There are some guys looking to rob us. There are some guys that were just trying to keep out of the law. They thought they could hide here. There's some guys that want recovery. So within the first 8 or 9 months, we decided that we were going to have a niche. And that niche was we're going to take people who have already gone through detox, shown that they want recovery because they went to a rehab instead of just going back out on the street, and basically wanted to have something beyond that because they felt they really had to relearn to restructure their life. And for the last 4.5, 5 years, we have not taken anybody in who is not coming out of a 21 or 28-day rehab, with a few exceptions. But 99% of you guys have come through a good program. State of South Carolina has mean, I was involved in New Jersey and New York. They don't have places like Morris Village and Holmesville. They don't have them. They got wards and mental hospitals. It's not the same thing at all. So you guys are blessed to be in the state of South Carolina. That's the story. That's how we got started. It's amazing.
Tiptoe.